Hi guys, welcome to the masterclass. We are still looking at chapter 1 legislation, and in our previous video we looked at 4X. Today we are looking at BCEA as well as triple BEE. I'm the general and this is the masterclass. Okay guys, as usual, we're going to start with the exam guideline. As you know, our exam guideline shows us exactly what we must know per each topic, and we also use it as a checklist to check when we are done with the topic if we have mastered everything. So let's get right into it. Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Number one, let's look at the purpose. It outlines conditions of employment. So what are we saying here? The Basic Conditions of Employment Act gives the minimum requirements, all the minimum requirements that a business must match in terms of how they treat an employee are prescribed by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. No business in South Africa can do less than these minimum requirements. Number two, it advances economic development because it ensures that employees are treated well and in such a way that they are remunerated in a way that makes them active economic participants. Number two, let's look at the impacts. There's always positive and negative. The positive impact establishes acceptable employment practices. So no one is in any doubt now as to what is an acceptable employment practice because all of these are laid down in black and white by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. It outlines minimum requirements for employment contracts. So when you draft a contract as an employer, you always have to consult with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act because no contract can be in contravention with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. What now? What are the actions regarded as non-compliance? Forbidding employees to discuss remuneration. That's number one. And most employers do this. They forbid employees to discuss remuneration because they don't want each employee to know what the other is earning and so forth because they are not following some of the rules. So they now say it's confidential, you should not discuss it. That is a discriminatory action. It's not allowed. They should not forbid employees to discuss remuneration. Number two, preventing maternity leave for pregnant employees. Now, this is just something else. Any female pregnant employee is given 4 months consecutive paid leave so that she can be paid while she's at home and she is taking care of the baby and so on because she is in no condition to work and focus and be productive while she is in that condition. So it's the law that says she must be paid for 4 consecutive months while she's at home. But now some businesses, they try to dodge this and they try to negotiate and say we pay for 2 months, then the other 2 months you are on your own and so forth. That is not allowed. Then the consequences, what are the consequences for those who do this, who do not comply? They may receive a compliance order. We've already seen that in our previous video. This applies almost to every act. Then labor inspectors may conduct investigations. So if there is suspicion that some of these labor practices are not being followed properly, labor inspectors may conduct investigations and their findings can be very damning against the business. Ways in which businesses can comply: they must display a summary of the act where employees can see it. So all employees must see all these provisions that are provided by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Then they must also follow them by paying employees over time. So when we go to the next slide, you will see some of these provisions. Then what are the special aspects? Remember, I said every act has 5 areas we look at, and then some acts have a special aspect. So Basic Conditions of Employment has a special aspect, which is the provisions. So let's look at the provisions. Number one provision is hours of work or work hours. What are we saying about the work hours? Employees are not allowed to work for more than 45 hours per week. So this week can be a 5-day working week or can be a 6-day working week, but whatever the case, employees must not work more than 45 hours a week. It becomes illegal. However, if for some reason they are required, then they must, that extra time above 45 hours must be seen as overtime. And overtime, as you will see in the next one, will be paid at 1,5 the normal rate if it's between Monday and Saturday, and it will be paid double if it's Sunday and a public holiday. But we'll look at it under overtime. So employees work 9 hours a day if they work 5 days or less per week. Employees may work 8 hours a day if they work more than 5 days a week. Night work performed by employees after 6 o'clock and before 6 o'clock in the morning. So 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. the following day should be done by mutual agreement, which means it should not be forced down on anyone. And employees must be compensated by allowance or reduction of work hours. Then we go to overtime, which I already said employees cannot be forced to work overtime, but they must agree to work overtime. So they cannot be told you are working overtime. They must agree, number one. Number two, employees cannot work more than 3 hours overtime per day or 10 hours per week. So even though there is too much work and you need workers to work overtime, there is also limits. It cannot become 3 hours a day, because imagine if they work 9 hours plus 3, that will become 12. So you cannot go beyond 12 hours of work a day. Similarly, per week, it's 45 hours. You can only add 10 hours of overtime, nothing more. Then overtime must be compensated at 1.5 times the normal rate of pay for overtime worked on weekdays and Saturdays. So if the day is between Monday and Saturday, provided it's not a public holiday, it's paid at 1,5 the rate, which is more. Then 2 times or double the normal rate if the time worked is a Sunday or a public holiday. That's provision number 2. Number 3, meal breaks and rest periods. Employees must have a meal break of 60 minutes after 5 continuous hours of work. So no one can work throughout from morning till evening because it's 9 hours. No. Within that 9 hours, after 5 consecutive hours of work, an employee must be given a meal break of 60 minutes. The meal break can be reduced to 30 minutes or half an hour by a mutual written agreement when employees work less than 6 hours per day. Employees must have a daily rest period of 12 continuous hours. So that's what we are saying. Between the time you leave work and the time you report, there must be at least 12 hours. That's a continuous rest. Then we go to the next one, termination of employment. An employment contract may only be terminated following 1 week's notice if the employee has been employed for 6 months or less. A minimum of 4 weeks notice must be given to the business if the employee has been employed for a year or longer. So this governs when an employee wants to leave. Remember, the business cannot just terminate a contract. So the employee also cannot just terminate and walk away. So the conditions are as follows. If the person has worked for less than a year or 6 months or so, then they can give 1 week's notice. But if for more than a year or two, then they have to provide 4 weeks notice so that it is also fair to the business. The employer must be given formal notice in writing if the employer has terminated the contract. Similarly, the employee must give the employer formal notice in writing for terminating the contract. The next one is child and forced labor. It is illegal to employ a child younger than 15 in South Africa. It is also illegal to force an employee to work. So there are two elements to it: no child labor and no forced labor. Businesses may employ children over the age of 15 if employment is not harmful to their well-being, health, education, moral, and social development. Minors under the age of 18 may not engage in dangerous work or work meant for adults, which means if the business employs somebody who's between 15 and 18, it is allowed, but they cannot give them work which is for an adult. Then the last one is the public holidays, which we already spoke about under overtime. Employees must be paid for any public holiday that falls on a working day, and employees may work on public holidays when there is a mutual agreement and they are paid double their normal rate. Hi guys, sorry to disturb your video. I'm just here to discuss with you 3 ways in which you can support the channel. Number one is to watch the ads. So guys, the ads that come before the video, during the video, and after the video are linked to this particular video that you are watching. So if you don't skip the ads and you actually watch, we're going to be rewarded by the advertisers. Then number two is to invite me as a guest speaker to your event at your school, a school function, prize giving day, revision classes, and so on. I'll gladly come. All the information you need is in the description box below. Number three is the Masterclass tour. So this year I will be visiting you. I'll be coming to a city near you. Come and join us for revision classes, exam preparation classes, and so on. All the information will be shared on this channel. Now let's get back to the video. The next provision we are going to talk about is the most popular one. It's called leave. Now, what do we mean by leave? So we have different types of leave. Annual leave. Number one, employees are entitled to 21 consecutive days annual leave per year, or 1 day for every 17 days worked, or 1 hour for every 17 hours worked. So you don't have to put all of that. You can just take 21 consecutive days annual leave per year. An employer can only pay a worker in lieu of granting leave if that worker leaves the job or terminates the employment contract. So that means you cannot offer someone money to work for their annual leave. You can only pay them if they cannot be able to benefit from it because they are leaving. So you pay them for that leave. Annual leave must be granted within 6 months after the leave cycle ended. Then sick leave. Employees are entitled to 30 days or 6 weeks paid sick leave in a 3-year cycle. So this one doesn't work on a yearly cycle. Why? Because we don't know what time or what month, what week a sickness can come to anybody. So these are days that are banked. So you have 6 weeks within a 3-year period. It's possible that in the first year you may not fall sick. So you still have your 6 weeks intact. So they don't fall away because 1 year has passed. They only fall away after 3 years. A medical certificate may be required before paying an employee who is absent for more than 2 consecutive days or who is frequently absent. Thereafter, they may take all 30 days of sick leave provided they meet legal requirements. The next one is what we talked about earlier, maternity leave. Pregnant employees are entitled to 4 consecutive months of maternity leave. This is paid leave. Pregnant employees are prevented from performing work that may be hazardous to themselves and the unborn child. Maternity leave usually commences any time from 4 weeks before the expected date of birth of the unborn child under the advice of a doctor or midwife. Then parental leave. An employee, irrespective of gender, who is a parent, is entitled to 10 consecutive days parental leave after the birth of his or her child. Most people actually don't know this. If you are the father of the child and the child has been born, you can take up to 10 days parental leave. Parental leave, however, is unpaid, but the employee may claim from the unemployment insurance fund. The employer must be informed or notified at least 1 month before the expected due date of birth. Adoption leave applies to the adoption of a child below the age of 2 years. So this also applies in a situation where these parents may not be the biological parents. They may have adopted the child. Parental leave will also apply. One parent of the adopted child is entitled to 10 weeks of adoption leave to take care of the child, while the other parent is entitled to 10 consecutive days normal parental leave. So it's not both parents who get to take 10 weeks of adoption leave. One parent will take 10 weeks of adoption leave if the child is under 2 years, and the other one will take normal 10 consecutive days parental leave. Commissioning parental leave is only applicable to surrogate motherhood, where one parent is entitled to 10 weeks parental leave to take care of the child, while the other parent is entitled to 10 consecutive days normal parental leave. Then the last one we'll talk about today is family responsibility leave. An employee may receive 3 to 5 days paid leave year on request in the event of the death of the employee's spouse or life partner or parent or adoptive parent, grandparent, child, adoptive child, grandchild, or sibling. In other words, close family. Upon the death of such a close family member, an employee is allowed 3 to 5 days leave to take care of business that comes with that. An employer may require reasonable proof before approving this type of leave, such as a death certificate or the family member whose funeral will be attended. Now we move on to the second act that we are looking at today, which is triple BEE. What does triple BEE mean? Broad-based Black economic empowerment. What do we mean by this? There is another thing called Black economic empowerment, BEE. But BEE does not cover everybody. It is limited because it covered only Black people in terms of skin color. But broad-based Black economic empowerment includes other people who may not be Black, but they are also non-white groups who were disadvantaged under apartheid. So let's look at what it covers. Number one, the purpose. It spreads wealth more broadly across all population groups. So you know that because of apartheid, whites had more money and more resources because they were given more opportunities during apartheid than any other race or any other ethnicity in South Africa. So broad-based Black economic empowerment is meant to allow other people the same opportunities or even more opportunities so they can catch up in terms of economic participation. So it spreads wealth more broadly across all population groups. It targets inequality in South Africa. By the way, in economics, we find that the Gini coefficient of South Africa is the highest in the world. There is the highest level of inequality in South Africa in the world. The gap between the rich and the poor is highest, is the biggest in South Africa. So triple BEE is there to address that. It targets inequality in South Africa. What is the impact? Positive impact, it redresses the demands for equity, enhances human resources development. Negative impact, rigid processes of implementation. So there are a lot of hoops businesses have to jump around in order to apply this properly, because there will be a score that is attached to every company to see how well they are doing in terms of triple BEE. And companies that don't do well in triple BEE will not be considered to work with government contracts and so on. This may lead to corruption, nepotism, and cronyism. This is whereby people just end up being employed because they are not white, they are Black, and it's now they are 10, they must be given the opportunity, even though due process may not have been followed, all in the name of triple BEE. Now, what are the actions regarded as non-compliance? Number one, failing to implement affirmative action. That affirmative action we spoke about, which favors all non-white groups, it must be properly implemented. If the company does not implement it, then it is regarded as non-compliance. Being involved in fronting practices. What is fronting? Fronting is when a white business or white business owners take a Black person or a non-white person and just put them in front to purport them as the owner. Can't they are the real owners, and that person is just being paid a small something in order to meet triple BEE requirements. What are the consequences if they are found guilty of doing any of that? Number one, they may receive a compliance order, which we have explained. Then they may also receive large fines, and sometimes they may even be imprisoned because there could be criminal charges of corruption here. Then ways in which businesses can comply: conduct regular skills development training so that you can upskill all the people that were previously disadvantaged, as well as support triple BEE compliant vendors. So you are going to see this when we look at the pillars. Now, like I said, there are always 5 areas we deal with when we look at any act, and with some acts, there will be special aspects. So this is one of such acts. Triple BEE has a special aspect which we call the pillars. So triple BEE has 5 pillars that we look at. Number one, it is management control. So I like to summarize these pillars with the acronym MOSES. Moses from the Bible, MOSES. MOSES. So I'm going to do them in that order so they become easy to remember. Number one, management control. Businesses must appoint black people in management positions, ensure that black females are represented in management. So it's twofold. It's not only black people, but also black females. And where are they being appointed to? Management, so they can be in a space where they make decisions. That's management control. Number two, it is ownership. What do we mean by ownership? Include black people in shareholding. This is not being a manager. This is now becoming an owner of the business where you are able to buy shares. We have seen this before. MultiChoice has MultiChoice Putuma Nati shares that they sold only to black people who could become a part of MultiChoice ownership through that program. MTN also ran a program called MTN Zakhele shares, whereby they were opening shares only to previously disadvantaged people for them to be a part of the ownership of MTN. It includes black people in shareholding, creates more opportunities for black people to become owners. So we have done M, we have done O, let's do S. Skills development. Businesses must contribute 1% of their payroll to fund skills development programs. We discussed this under Skills Development Act. 1% of their payroll if their salary bill is 500,000 and above. Then they must engage black employees in skills development initiatives. So that is our S. Let's go to E. E is enterprise and supplier development. Sometimes we call it ESD for short. Identify black-owned suppliers that can supply goods and services. So this is how we can support black people. It's not only about freebies. There are black businesses which are providing different types of services. So on the services that we need as a business, we should look for a black-owned business that can supply us with that service so that as we are paying for normal services that we would have gotten, we are also at the same time empowering a black-owned business. Then develop and implement a supply chain. Businesses can invest and support black-owned SMMEs. What are SMMEs? These are small, micro, and medium enterprises, which is just small businesses that are starting, that are black-owned. You can invest in them by giving them mentorship, you can give them donations, and so forth. Then the last S we're going to look at is social responsibility. Businesses must contribute towards CSI projects and community development. This is where they impact the community in which they are operating by building things that will help people in the process. Focus on critical areas which can affect growth and development, e.g. education, unemployment, etc. Before we go to the difference between BEE and triple BEE, I'd like to ask you guys to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you have, thank you so much. Please continue to engage with us. Comment, like, and share the links with the people in your school, your groups, your friends, and so forth. We are on the road to 5K subscribers, and I'm hoping we are going to reach it before the end of February. Thank you so much. Now back to differences between BEE and triple BEE. Now, BEE is a government policy that may not always be enforced, while triple BEE is an act that is enforceable and must be complied with by all businesses. So a business has to comply with triple BEE, but not necessarily with BEE, because that's a policy of government and it can change depending on which party becomes the government. Then BEE benefited only a few previously disadvantaged people in the economy, but triple BEE encourages a wider group of previously disadvantaged people, which includes black women, people who are physically challenged, youth, and people in rural areas to participate in the economy, as well as include other non-white groups, people that you may not see immediately as black, but as long as they are non-white, they fit into the definition of broad-based economic empowerment. BEE resulted in a few previously disadvantaged individuals sharing in the wealth of the economy, which was increasing that gap between the rich and the poor. then triple BEE aims to distribute the country's wealth across a broader spectrum of society so that the rich people or the people that have money are also balanced in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of disability, and any other diversity measure. Now, thank you so much for watching today. For any other X that are not covered in this video, I've got you covered, guys. Please enjoy this video. I'll see you next time. God bless you.